Hello everyone, it's Kelly here. There is a cat down here who may poke her head up at from time to time, but we'll just enjoy that if and when it comes. Today we are talking about books that I have acquired in the month of March. I've got quite a few books to show you because we've had the very good fortune to have a big book fair where I acquired quite a few books, and then there's just been a few others that have come in from different places as well. So there's quite a few secondhand books. In fact, I think I'm only going to be showing you one brand new book. Yeah, and everything else is secondhand. So I've bought these books for like a couple of dollars each. So I'm really pleased with what I've been able to get for in this month for the price that I've paid for them. More books than I am ever going to read. Obviously, like my reading output versus the input of books onto my shelves, very vastly different at the moment, so we do need to rectify that. However, we are definitely going to be moving things along as the year goes on. February is generally a pretty slow reading month for me because I'm getting back to work and doing all of those things. So by the time I will be filming soon, probably through this next week that's coming, we'll be filming my February wrap up. There will not be very many books on that wrap up, but that's okay. It's all right. It's a historic thing. We know last February I only read one book. It was a good one, but it was one book. So it's okay. We know February's a slow month, but lots and lots of books have come in because we've had some really good sales going on. Okay, let's get into the books and have a look at what I have acquired. I'm going to show you the brand new book that I purchased, and it's actually very tiny. I'm going to hold it up against a regular sized book to show you the difference. It's very small. So it's called On Reckoning by Amy Remeikis. I heard Amy Remeikis speaking on TV, and this is a book about the interaction of the media and politics when we're talking about sexual assault and the things that are happening to women and have historically happened and continue to happen to women in all parts of the world and all levels of society, if for want of a better word. But we're now living in a time where we are speaking up more and more, I think, about how unacceptable it is that these things are being swept under the carpet. You know, people need to be brought to justice for the illegal and traumatizing, damaging things that they're doing to other people, and they certainly should not be being protected by via the mechanisms of politics, the law, and the media, and the way that we speak to about and to women who have had these experiences. That is also going to be the focus of this book. So I heard her talking about the book and also just talking in general. She's a very intelligent commentator in that space, and I'm really looking forward to reading this. It's very short, so I might even get to it quite soon. They're very little pages. There's not very much text, so but it's about just over 100 pages, but tiny. 100 tiny pages, so I'm sure I can get through this one pretty quickly, but I'm very much looking forward to reading that and learning more about you know, from somebody who is very much operating and monitoring that space, and learning a lot more about how those things interact to just continue to make things difficult for survivors of sexual assault in our society. Okay, we're going to talk now about some on a completely different topic and sort of headspace. Talk about some children's books, and we're talking some middle grade type of books. We're going to talk, possibly there might be some YA here, but I don't think so. I think it's mostly just middle grade. But I found quite a lot of really interesting looking middle grade for, like, as I say, only a couple of dollars, that have piqued my interest and may pique your interest as well. If you've read any of these, let me know and tell me which ones are really good. So the first one is called Whimsy and Woe, and I'm not going to lie to you, I literally picked this one up because of how beautiful the cover is. I mean, come on. That is just insanely gorgeous. So it's by Rebecca McRitchie and illustrated by Sonia Kretschmar, I think that is. Look at how beautiful condition this book is in. I doubt that it's even been read, but it just looks absolutely beautiful. But let me tell you a little bit about it. After being abandoned by their thespian parents, Whimsy and Woe Mordaunt are left in the care of their austere aunt Apolline. Forced to work in Apolline's boarding house, slaving at the beck and call of outlandish and demanding guests, and sharpening the thorns of every plant in the poisonous plant garden, Whimsy and Woe lose all hope that their parents will ever return, until one day, quite by accident, the siblings stumble upon a half-charred letter that sets them on a course to freedom and finding their parents. So we will definitely get to this at some point, but it looks really, really good. Another one that I'm pretty confident is a middle grade. I'm not 100% sure, but I think it is. It's called The Secret of Nightingale Wood by Lucy Strange. And this one is described as a beautifully tangled story of friendship, fairy tales, and family secrets. 1919. Mama is ill. Father has taken a job abroad. Nanny Jane is too busy to pay any attention to Henrietta and the things she sees or thinks she sees in the shadows of their new home, Hope House. All alone with only stories for company, Henry will be short for Henrietta. Henry discovers that Hope House is full of strange secrets, a forgotten attic, ghostly figures, mysterious firelight that flickers in the trees beyond the garden. One night she ventures into the darkness of Nightingale Wood. What she finds there will change her whole world. So again, this is actually, again, a very beautiful book, and I'll just turn it slightly so you can see it's got kind of metallic elements to the cover as well. So quite a beautiful one there too. This one cost me $3. What a bargain. Okay, this one I was quite excited to find. Again, we've got that beautiful metallic foil on the cover. This one's called The Girl of Ink and Stars, which is probably a little hard to see. If I just do this, you'll be able to see, hopefully. This is by Kiran Millwood Hargrave, who is the author of a book I just finished for adults called Mercies, which was really, really good. So when I saw this one secondhand and saw who it was by, I was very excited because I think it will be, if the Mercies is anything to go off, I feel like this book is going to be great as well. So it says, each of us carries the map of our lives on our skin, in the way we walk, even in the way we grow. Forbidden to leave her island, Isabella dreams of the faraway lands her father once mapped. When her best friend disappears, she's determined to be part of the search party. Guided by an ancient map and her knowledge of the stars, Isabella navigates the island's dangerous, forgotten territories. But beneath the dry rivers and dead forests, a fiery myth is stirring from its sleep. Oh, and we've got a beautiful map as the end paper there. Ooh. Okay. Interesting. So this is the revealed version of that same map. Interesting. So that should be a really, really good one. Again, this one was $3, so very, very cheap. And I'm excited to get to it. Another middle grade that I've picked up, and I have seen this one before, and had it on my wish list for a really long time. So I was very excited to find it. It cost me $6, but it's a gorgeous hardback. Let's actually have a look and see what's underneath. Ooh, pretty, sort of very old-fashioned-y look to it underneath the hardback, under the dust jacket. But here, let me tell you a little bit about the Doldrums. So on the back, it's got this, it looks kind of like a newspaper report. Explorers vanish in Arctic waters. The renowned explorers Ralph and Rachel Helmsley embarked on an expedition to Antarctica with the intention of documenting the relational habits of penguins. During their voyage south, Ralph spotted an iceberg hosting 2 separate colonies of penguin and asked the captain to take the ship as close as was safe. Right? Ralph and Rachel then rowed a dinghy to the mighty chunk of ice and climbed on top to investigate. Snow began to fall and the weather quickly worsened. The ship's captain sounded the alarm, but there was no sign of the Helmsleys. Soon the iceberg vanished. While there is no proof to suggest they are dead, it doesn't look good. They left behind their son, Richard B. Helmsley, a lawyer, and their grandson, Archer B. Helmsley, a dreamer. And I believe this story is told from the perspective of Archer. Archer B. Helmsley has grown up in a house full of oddities and treasures collected by his grandparents, the famous explorers. He knows every nook and cranny. He knows them all too well. After all, ever since his grandparents went missing on an iceberg, his mother barely lets him leave the house. Archer B. Helmsley longs for adventure, grand adventures with parachutes and exotic sunsets and interesting characters. But how can he have an adventure when he can't leave his house? It helps that he has friends like Adelaide L. Belmont, who must have had many adventures to end up with a wooden leg, perhaps from a run-in with a crocodile, perhaps not. And Oliver Glubb. Oliver will worry about all the details, so Archer doesn't have to. Archer, Adelaide, and Oliver make a plan to get out of the house, out of their town entirely. It's a good plan. Well, it's not bad anyway, but nothing goes quite as they expect. It sounds like a sweet little story with some adventuring children, which is always good fun. Right, do I have any more? Oh yes, I do. I've got The Extremely Inconvenient Adventures of Bronte Mettlestone by Jaclyn Moriarty, which again, this is a lovely hardback book, and it cost me $5. This is, again, told by children, by a child. I was 10 years old when my parents were killed by pirates. This did not bother me as much as you might think. I hardly knew my parents. Bronte Mettlestone's parents ran away to have adventures when she was a baby, leaving her to be raised by her Aunt Isabel and the butler. But Bronte's parents have left extremely detailed and bossy instructions for Bronte in their will. She is to travel the kingdoms and empires perfectly alone, delivering special gifts to her 10 other aunts. There is a farmer aunt and a veterinarian aunt, a pair of aunts who captain a cruise ship together, and an aunt who is the reigning monarch of a small kingdom. Now armed with only her parents' instructions, a chest full of strange gifts, and her own strong will, Bronte must journey forth and face dragons, chief detectives, and pirates, and the gathering suspicion that there, sorry, lost my point, my spot there, that there might be something more to her extremely inconvenient quest than meets the eye. So yeah, I think this will be an interesting sort of adventure story also, and I am keen to get to it, although it is a very thick one, so it might be a little while till I actually end up being able to read it. I think most of the rest of these books are for adults, but I do have one. I had never heard of this before, so please, I'm sure there's like a lot about it, because it is The Purloining of Prince Oleomargarine by Mark Twain and Philip Stead. So when I picked this up, I was like, I've never heard of this. What is this? You would think, given that it's by Mark Twain, that you would hear about it. So it cost me $6. It's a lovely large format hardback. But essentially, what happened was, this is a story that Mark Twain sort of took notes on, starting to put together for his children, and then it was an unfinished tale. Like, it wasn't a finished book, which I guess is probably why I haven't heard of it. However, they found the notes in the archives, and then Philip Stead is the person who's sort of put the story together. So using Mark Twain's notes, he has turned it into a story. So it just sounded really interesting and something that I would like to have a look at. It was, it has lovely illustrations throughout. They're very sort of subtle sort of illustrations, but really beautiful. So I'm looking forward to reading this one and seeing what it's all about. So that's the end of the books for children that I have. Just putting this down so it's not going to fall. Then I've got some books for adults, which I'm also very excited about. Oh, I told a lie. I said there was only one book that I had purchased, but there's not. There's another, and that's this one. This is, sorry, that I had purchased brand new. This is 100 Days by Alice Pung, who is an Australian author, and I believe this is the, so it's a 16-year-old girl called Karuna, and she gets pregnant, but her mother, who I believe, when I've heard other people talking about this book, I think her background is Filipino, and she's sort of one of those very strict types of parents, a single mum as well, I believe, and so she's really not happy, obviously, about her 16-year-old daughter falling pregnant. But she's also quite controlling in terms of what she thinks that she should do, and so on. And so this book kind of is the main character talking to her unborn baby as it's growing inside of her. And I've heard really, really great things about this, that it's just, the voice in it is beautiful, and that it's a well-told story. So I'm really interested to get to it, which is why I paid the money and I purchased it brand new, because I really want to get to it very soon. So this will be, I think, on my TBR for one of the months that are coming up. Very excited to get to that one. And then I think all the rest of them are secondhand ones that I picked up. This one is The Dressmakers of Yarrandarrah Prison. Again, another Australian author, Meredith Jaffe. And this is all about, it's told from the perspective of a man who is in Yarrandarrah prison, and his daughter is getting married. Her name's Debbie. He's called Derek, and he wants to be there, but of course he's in prison for embezzling funds from the golf club, and he hasn't spoken to his daughter in years. That his ex-wife has sort of made things difficult, and so on. So what he decides to do, so he's sitting there embroidering a cushion at his weekly prison sewing circle when he decides he's going to make her a wedding dress. So they all kind of gather together and to try and make this wedding dress for Debbie. And yeah, I think it sounds like a really interesting premise for a story, and I'm very interested and excited to get to this one. Another one that I've picked up is called The Wolf and the Woodsman by Ava Reid. Oh, it's a debut, I didn't realise, which is very good. So it says, a spirited outcast, a disgraced prince, a world where monsters roam free. In her forest-veiled pagan village, Evike, E-V-I-K-E, however you want to pronounce that, I suppose, is the only woman without power, treated like an outcast due to her corrupted bloodline. So when soldiers arrive from the Holy Order of Woodsman to claim a girl for the king's blood sacrifice, she is betrayed by her fellow villagers and surrendered. When monsters attack the Woodsmen and their captive en route to the capital, they slaughter everyone but her and the cold, one-eyed captain. But she soon learns he's no ordinary woodsman. He is Gaspar Barani, the disgraced prince, whose cruelly zealous brother plans to seize the throne and instigate a reign of religious persecution and ethnic cleansing. With no one else to rely on, Evike and the captain form a tenuous pact to stop his brother. As their mission takes them from the bitter northern tundra to the smog-choked capital, their mutual loathing slowly turns to affection. But trust can easily be betrayed, and as Evike reconnects with her estranged father and discovers her own hidden magic, she and Gaspar must decide where their loyalties really lie. So that sounds really interesting. Very excited to have been able to pick up a copy of The Yield by Tara June Winch. This was the Miles Franklin Literary Award winner in 2020, and I know lots of people who have read this book and absolutely loved it, and said it was a must read. So I am really, really excited to get to this one. She's also an Aboriginal Australian author, so if you are following along with the Australian Reading Challenge that I'm hosting over on the Storygraph, this would be a great one to add to that prompt if you can get a hold of a copy yourself. But yeah, I'm very, very excited about this one. Then the next one that I've picked up, I actually only got this one yesterday. It's called The Bee and the Orange Tree by Melissa Ashley. So this is a historical fiction, the untold story of the woman who invented fairy tales. It's 1699 and the salons of Paris are bursting with the creative energy of fierce, independently minded women. But outside those doors, the patriarchal forces of Louis XIV and the Catholic Church are moving to curb women's freedoms. In this battle for equality, Baroness Marie Catherine d'Aulnoy invents a powerful weapon, fairy tales. When Mary Catherine's daughter Angelina arrives in Paris for the first time, she is swept up in the glamour and sensuality of the city, where a woman may live outside the confines of the church or marriage. But this is a fragile freedom, as she discovers when Mary Catherine's close friend Nicolas Tiquet is arrested, accused of conspiring to murder her abusive husband. In the race to rescue Nicolas, illusions will be shattered and dark secrets revealed as all three women learn how far they will go to preserve their liberty in a society determined to control them. So that sounded really, really interesting, and definitely the kind of book that's right up my alley. The next one is Wimmera by Mark Brandi, and this was the 2016 winner of Crime Writers Association Debut Dagger Award. So well done to Mark Brandi for that win. So this is a sort of a murder mystery, I want to say. So we've got it's 1989. It's the long hot summer of 1989. Ben and Fab were best friends. Growing up in a small town, they spent their days playing cricket, yabbying in local dams, wanting a pair of Nike Air Maxes, and not talking about how Fab's dad hit him or how much the sudden death of Ben's neighbour unsettled him. Almost teenagers, they already knew some things were better left unsaid. Then a newcomer arrived in the Wimmera. Fab reckoned the man was a secret agent, and he and Ben staked him out. Up close, his shoulders were wide, and the veins in his arms stuck out blue and green. His hands were enormous, red and knotty. He looked strong, maybe even stronger than Fab's dad. Neither realised the shadow this man would cast over both their lives. 20 years later, Fab is stuck in the same town, going nowhere, but hoping for somewhere better. Then a body is found in the river, and Fab can't ignore the past anymore. So that sounds like a fascinating kind of small town story. The next one is quite interesting because the morning prior to me going to the big book sale where I got this book, I had picked up a copy of this book at my local library because my husband and I went up to our library. I had to renew a book because I was almost finished but not quite, and I had renewed it too many times, so I had to go in. So we did that, and I picked up this book to borrow and then found a copy of it at the massive book sale that I went to, and that is Peter Goldsworthy's Minotaur. And I had sort of in the library read a few pages of this book, and it just sounded so, I loved the voice of the character, and it just sounded like a really interesting story. So basically, we've got a detective sergeant who has had a presumably in service accident where he's had a bullet wound to the head, and it has left him blind. So he wasn't blind before, but now he is blind because of this bullet wound. So he's caught up in a workers' compensation battle. He's trying to, to determine how much he should be awarded in his workers' compensation. And then he's got, his wife has moved out. he's been restoring a motorbike. He obviously can't do that while blind. And then the man who shot him has broken out from jail, and he's seeking to finish the job. So it's supposedly this sort of like a mix of kind of comedy and, this crime story that's kind of going on as well. A bit of a love story as well. So it just seems like a really, sort of not like anything I've ever read before type of book. And from the couple of pages that I read while I was in the library, it's definitely very well written. So I'm looking forward to reading this one, and finding out a little bit more about this character, and like watching that story kind of unfold. Almost there, 3 to go. This one is called The Lucky Gala. And this one interested me, not least of all because of the beautiful cover. So this is a very up-close shot of a galah. So a galah is a type of parrot, I guess, that's an Australian. We have them here in Australia. I assume they're native to Australia, but birds can fly, so they're probably in some other countries too. So basically, this book is narrated by a galah called Lucky. It's 1969, and a remote coastal town in Western Australia is poised to play a pivotal part in the moon landing. Perched on the red dunes of its outskirts looms the Great Dish, a relay for messages between Apollo 11 and Houston, Texas. Radar technician Evan Johnson and his colleagues stare transfixed at the moving images on the console, although his glossy young wife Linda seems distracted. Meanwhile, the people of Port Badminton have gathered to watch Armstrong's small step on a single television sitting centre stage in the old theatre. The Kelly family, a crop of redheads, sit in rare silence. Roo shooters at the back of the hall squint through their rifle sights to see the tiny screen. I'm in my cage on the Kellys' back veranda. I sit here unheard, underestimated, biscuit crumbs on my beak. But fate is a curious thing, for just as Evan Johnson's story is about to end, and perhaps with a giant leap, my story prepares to take flight. It just sounds really interesting. Like, it's an interesting time and an interesting, historical event anyway, but it's told by a bird, and I don't know. It just sounds really, really interesting. Okay, so I'm very excited to get to that one. This one is called The Artist's Portrait by Julie Keyes, and this is, it takes place in 1992. It says, whatever it was that drew me to Muriel, it wasn't her charm. In 1992, morning sickness drives Jane Cooper to pre-dawn walks of her neighbourhood, where she meets an unfriendly woman who sprays her with a hose as she passes by. This woman claims to be Muriel Kemp, an infamous artist from Sydney's bohemian 1920s. Contemporary critics argue that legend, rather than ability, has secured her position in history. They also claim that the real Muriel Kemp died in 1936. Driven to find out more about her curmudgeonly neighbour, Jane begins to investigate the life of Muriel, murder, narcissist or artistic genius, and a woman before her time. Who really is Muriel Kemp? Sounds really interesting. And for me, because I'm very much into art, and especially art from that period in Sydney's history where I live, that's like, a marrying of things that are of interest to me for sure. The last one though that I want to talk about is called Once Upon a River, and it is by Diane Setterfield. And this one is not Australian. This takes place on the banks of the Thames River. So it's a dark midwinter night. The Swan, an ancient inn on the banks of the Thames. The regulars are entertaining themselves by telling stories when the door bursts open on an injured stranger. In his arms is the corpse of a drowned child. Hours later, the dead girl stirs, takes a breath, and returns to life. Is it a miracle? Is it magic? Or can it be explained by science? And who exactly is the little girl? As news spreads of the child who drowned and lived again, 3 families come to claim her, and the stories of 3 lost girls and a missing pig come to light. In the background is the river itself, powerful, unknowable, life-giving and life-taking. There is talk of a ferryman who appears to those who get into trouble on the river. But at the Swan Inn is anything ever just a story. So this sounds like a really kind of interesting tale that is going to be kind of weaving different stories and all kind of focused around the Thames River, which just sounds really, really interesting. And I just love this cover too. Again, we've got some like metallic foiling. Obviously that's been drawing my eye when I've been shopping for books recently. All right, everyone, that's it from me for today. I hope you've enjoyed seeing the books that I've been fortunate enough to pick up this month, and I hope that there's something in there that piqued your interest. If you've read any of these books, let me know in the comments, because I'd love to hear what you thought about them, because obviously when you read the back or you just read a couple of pages, you sometimes don't really get the full picture of what the story's about. So I'd love to hear all about your experiences with these books if you've read them. All right, I will see you on the next one, everyone. Thanks for watching. Bye.